everybody. Hope you guys are doing well and ready and anxious for all the plethora of message center announcements that we have. So I was going through all this information over the last couple of days, and it's not as much as I thought it would be. But again, just the fact that there's so much stuff happening, especially around the team side of things and related technologies, that we need to keep up on these things. So make sure you guys are doing a good job going out to the message center and taking a look at those things specific for you as your organization is using different services, and prioritizing things. That's the one message I want to make sure comes across anytime we're talking about message center posts and any updates that are coming out with it. So let's get started in December. All right, so let's start off with Outlook. This happens to be specifically with iOS and Android mobile apps for Android. And with this particular update, you're going to be able to then decide how many days of emails that you want to be able to take offline so that you can use. So if you have a scenario where you are going to be in, basically an area dead zone that you're not going to have cell coverage, but you still need to have access to your emails, this is going to be one way to be able to do that. So there is a preview going on starting here late in December, going in through January, and then talking standard time, mid-January through mid-February. You can get into that preview if you want to test some of this stuff out, but really waiting for that standard is going to be for most people and give you an opportunity to be able to receive what and how that works for your organization. So basically, there's going to be a toggle inside the app. You can say, hey, and then how many days you want to be able to keep. All right, let's jump to SharePoint. And I know I started off, and I know a lot of you guys started off on the SharePoint side when it comes to Office 365. And one of the things that we all had issues with was accessibility. So one of the things that Microsoft is finally doing here is being able to add accessibility labels to tables inside a SharePoint page, right? So being able to add that accessibility, that table label, or even designating something as a header row or column. That's what's coming with this particular feature here, early January to end of January, and be able to make it easier for you to be able to have those screen readers be able to say, hey, this table is whatever it happens to be, right? So giving that capability right away. So make sure you're letting your paid authors know that this capability is going in there. And these are your SharePoint page authors that would be able to do this. All right, let's get into the Teams plethora of information that's happening. Of course, we get this all the time, a lot of Teams updates because there's so many different things that are in Teams. First thing we're going to talk about is for improved frontline worker availability. This is specific to, I'm not sure how many of you know or work with, but the Shifts app, that's parts of Microsoft Teams. So basically, you're going to be able to get a little bit more capability for your shift workers to be able to add availability for a specific date. And if you have any recurring instances happening and you add an additional manual date in there, the manual date will override those recurring dates, right? And then as the dates expire, all the automatic pieces will be removed. You can also manually delete dates that no longer are needed after the fact, just making it easier to be able to put in that availability so that then the supervisors can come in here and make those changes and say, hey, yeah, I want to be able to be brought Bob in for this date. I see he's available, that type of piece. So mid-January to late January, so coming up here next month. On the Teams meeting side of things, you may have been hearing this thing called Teleframe. This is a technology that's coming to the Teams rooms and specific to any cameras that are out there. It's a cloud-based service that's going to take all of the members that are in that conference room and be able to have individual images of them in a Teams meeting. As the example, you kind of see that here. These 4 people here are all in a conference room. And so you're seeing their expressions, you're seeing what they're talking about. It makes it a lot easier in that connection with them in that particular meeting. Right, so now what this change is going to do, it's really about the Teams app, right? And along with this, there is going to be a recognition component that goes along with that as well. Being able to say, all right, so now yes, that information is coming from the Teams room and the cameras. Now the app will be able to do it. The new Teams app will be able to then display that information appropriately, put them in the right spots, and utilize that. The other piece is the recognition piece, right? So if, and again, there is a capability to be able to have your face recognized through this service. If you've enrolled in that and have that done already, then it will recognize you in the service and be able to say, yes, this is Bob, this is Mary, and this is Jane, right? So you can be able to see them with their labels, and that's the important piece. Right, so that's going to be so intelligent. Or Teleframe is going to be with the new Teams physical app, right? Your desktop app, and the recognition expansion piece is going to be Classic and the new Teams app. So keep that in mind. All right, so a lot of the nonsense that one of the announcements, and we may be able to touch that in a little bit, is the fact that we're doing a lot more around BYOD meeting rooms. And this is one of the new features that are coming out here early January to late January for Target, and then late January to early February for Standard. The ability to be able to then quickly get up and running by plugging in a computer and then having the meeting up on the monitor where you can then still do things on your computer. So it's not a direct screen share. It's like you're extending that meeting onto the monitor, making it easier for you to be able to do some things, setting up some content that you want to be able to bring on into the meeting, or even answer questions, things like that in the chat during the same time. So it allows you to be able to multitask. So keep that one in mind, especially for those types of rooms. Another one that was, and we want to maybe get into a little bit more detail on this a little bit later, is this whole voice isolation capability, and thinking about the ability to take your voice and enroll it into the service. And it will use AI to filter out all the background noise and even specifically people talking, right? Because it's going to lock onto your voice, and that AI is going to say, yep, I just want this information versus everything else that's back there, right? So it utilizes advanced deep learning, speech services, and audio processing technology to be able to do all of that. Again, you do need to enroll your voice into the service for that to work. And in fact, I did that with my client here, and luckily, I don't have anything going on noise-wise, but really it does a really good job isolating my voice. I've been in meetings where my wife or my kids have come through, they don't hear anything around that. So the technology is working, and is a really good way to be able to then prevent that outside noise coming into your meetings. All right, so there is another additional piece. Oh, my apologies, I did not update the title, but that's okay. Think of this as really the capability around this particular note, and I'll put it into the chat later on, is the ability to be able to remove items from the activity feed. And this is a long time standing piece that people want to be able to say, I don't want to see this anymore. You know, even though you read it, right? I just don't want to see that anymore, and get rid of that in my activities feed. So that's coming out here mid-December to late December and into February for standard release. Now, you may know that Microsoft has been really updating the profile card. There's been a major revamp and making sure it's the same across the board. Well, this continues on into the mobile side of things as well. So we're getting a lot more of that goodness when it comes to that profile information in a mobile app now. So already started from a targeted release going into the late December, standard early January to late January, and you're going to be able to literally tap on someone's profile name or even their profile picture, and you'll be able to see this contact card, right? So the example you see on the left, that's mine. Like if I were looking at mine, I will see all that information. If I was going to someone else and looking at their user card, this is what I would see, right? So if you have LinkedIn connected, if you have all those other pieces in it, you will see all of that. And it will also show, you know, what your updates are to that. If you have pronouns in there, all those things should see up-to-date information from that. So again, that profile card is going across everything. All right. Then let's hit on Teams Phone in the app specifically. And what's coming up here in late January to early January to late January is the ability to be able to have transfer, hold, and share all on the stage screen, right? So that first screen, as you're looking at that call, you'll now see those buttons in there. You don't have to go to the more to be able to get it. Use case studies were showing that those were the most used features within these types of calls. Again, this is on the mobile app. Make sure it's just a lot easier to be able to access that information and use it. All right, some quick mentions. I do want to talk about a couple of these things. The first one is the ability to archive channels. So that is coming here late or early January to late January, and just be able to get rid of those. I mean, just you may not want to delete them quite yet, right? They're not on that stage yet, but you may want to archive them because they're not being used, but maybe one of those recurring type scenarios that you may be using it later on. So keep that one in mind. On the VDA Engage side of things, we have one coming here. It's a long rollout from December to March. But baby, you'll have more options when you're doing a post within Viva Engage. You're going to have more content capabilities. It's just going to be a lot easier to be able to do, and it's going to be the same experience from web to Teams to mobile across the board. Mid-January to February, you're going to get an update that's going to allow you to be able to save attachments in the new Outlook. Again, I want to make sure I emphasize this. In the new Outlook for Windows, you're going to be able to have a, hey, I want to be able to save this attachment here, and it's not going to do the normal default piece, right? So it's going to allow you to be able to change where you want to have that set up. Collaborative notes, if you are familiar with those, that's the capability in a meeting like this to be able to have a collaborative notes, which uses things like loops and lists, and those things all together, OneNote part of that as well, so that I can do that before, during, and after type idea for meetings. Well, that was in regular meetings that we scheduled through our calendar, but not the channel meetings. And so now this feature will give us that capability with channel meetings starting targeted early January to late January, and standard mid-March or February to early March. For those using walkie-talkies and that walkie-talkie feature in Teams, you're going to get an update that will allow you to be able to have, if you have multiple channels that actually have walkie-talkie going on, you'll be able to actually hear from all of them as opposed to jumping from one, then having to change the channel, jump into another, and so on and so forth. So if you have multiple walkie-talkies going on, you'll be able to hear from all of them and then choose which one you want to go to. Another one I thought was interesting, I had heard the rumors about this one, is that we are finally coming out with the Microsoft 365 backup feed capabilities. And this allows you to be able to do backup and restore for SharePoint, OneDrive, and Exchange Online. And that's for global administrators. If you are a SharePoint admin, then you'll be able to obviously just do SharePoint and OneDrive, but gives you that capability to do that right inside Microsoft 365. Some updates on whiteboard and external guest sharing that are happening here mid-December to late January. Please take a look at that. And then in December to March, we're also getting a capability to be able to do inline watching of stream content, right? So stream videos, if you're inside the organization, and so, you know, if Michelle sent it to me, since we're in the same organization, I would be able to go and watch it inside Outlook as opposed to being popped out into another browser or someplace else. If you're in different organizations, yes, it'll push it out to the browser so you can watch it within that. And then one thing around Teams Rooms on Android that I want to kind of mention, early December to early January. If you have Microsoft Teams Rooms on Android, there's going to be a feature coming up here where it'll allow you to, if you have a touch console associated to that MTR OA, then what's going to happen is that when an update gets pushed out to the MTR OA, then it will also push it out to that touch console and make sure that they're up to date, right? the caveat of it is they have to be at the right level for that to happen. So if you have two different apps, like one on the MTROA and one on the touch panel, they have to be the same version of it for it to get up there, right? So it will actually do some of that updating for you, right? So if the panel has to get updated, it will update the panel, and then it will make sure it updates both of those. So keep that in mind. So you can, those updates are going to be automatic, and we'll make sure that you keep your stuff in right condition. All right, some updates I do want to mention, a couple things. One of them is a change in the dates for private line. This is a Teams phone capability that was announced probably about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. That gives you the ability to be able to have a private line brought in. So it's inbound calls only, no outbound calls, but you can now have 2 lines associated to that person if that's the case. We're going to have a change in an update that pushed out a little bit for Chrome and Edge. So if you're doing meetings in Chrome and Edge, you're going to be able to get the 9 video screens, so a 3x3 grid for those who are in the meeting. Also, quick access to Teams and SharePoint document libraries. There is an update coming up fairly soon that will allow to make it easier to be able to access your SharePoint libraries, either in Teams or in SharePoint. The offline mode for OneDrive for Web, which I haven't got a chance to test this out yet. That's getting pushed back mid-December to early February, but the ability to be able to take your OneDrive for business in the web, your browser, and be able to have an offline mode to work on that content if you're not in a area to have any connectivity. So some really good things happening on that side of things. Check out these dates, and most importantly, your admin action updates that require. Some things you need to make sure you get done before the deadline. One of them, the new one that's in there, is March 11th. This is for the get and transform data features in Excel. Make sure you check that out. There's some updates going on there. Don't forget the new Teams default will be defaulted to the new Teams starting March 31st. So if you haven't started pushing out Microsoft, a new Teams version app, make sure you do that. Start testing, make sure you're getting there. I understand it's not feature parity with the Classic yet. We're getting there. I keep on hearing that from internal conversations. It will take time. And of course, don't forget about that other big one, the Stream retirement, the Stream Classic retirement happening in April. All right, with that.